Hey, Patreons, welcome back to the Spotlight. This is our segment where we talk to awesome creators in the world of all the things we enjoy. And we, Todd and myself, are joined today by the legendary Chris Claremont. Yes. What was your name again? Chris Claremont. How are you today, sir?
I'm fine. I'm just trying to, as I said, get my computer sorted out.
Looks fine
So
to me.
I'm not a ghost hiding in darkness.
Not at all. Your body of work is incredible. We're going to break it down, but I always like to get the ball rolling, and that's funny. I don't.
In a very quick 5 minutes, we'll cover everything. Don't worry.
And the clock is rolling. No, I always like to get the ball rolling by simply asking the how question. How did you get rolling? How did you get into the business?
Essentially by accident. Let me see if I can find. That's what I love about computers. It's like there's never a volume control when you need it. But
we can hear you.
Okay,
unless you can't hear us. But yeah, no, please.
So far, so good. Well, basically, back in the dawn of time, the school I went to, Bard College, had a policy where they would shut down from basically Christmas till the beginning of March. And we were all sent out for what they called field period, which is you get 2 months in the winter to basically, if all things work out, work in a job or association related to your major, and that way gain personal experience, get professional credits, and go back to school and go for your degree. This was 1969, and my three basic focuses at that point were political theory, and Bard was then, as it is now, a very liberal, though not quite as radical liberal as back in the dawn of time, oriented school, and the Nixon administration had just begun.
Oh my.
So that pretty much killed any thought of going down to Washington and getting a political theory job. And my other major at the time was acting, and January is a lousy time to go into New York and look for a theater job, since everything is closing unless it's a big hit. There weren't that many big hits back then. And I was a writer, and my parents were good friends with the writer-artist Al Jaffe. And my thought was...
Mad fame.
Oh, yeah, we know some people. And I thought, hey, if I could get a job working at Mad Magazine, that would be really cool. And Al basically went to my parents and said, "Are you insane? Do you know what we do there?"
Oh, no.
Because essentially all of the creators would go over to, what's his face? Things you knew 5 minutes ago. To the publisher's house, and they would just get hammered and come up with the issue.
And creative juices, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was great, but Al wasn't going to let me. This is before SNL. So he said, "Does he have any interest in comic books?" And I said, "Sure," And he said, "Well, I have a friend, and I will ask him if he has anything at his house." And the next day, I get a call from Stan Lee, or as he put it, "Hey there, true believer, this is Stan Lee." And
that how he introduced himself?
Did he? Is that how he sounded
well,
like
he
on the phone?
always introduces himself.
Oh my gosh,
You know,
that's so funny. Oh my
he
god.
walked up to Pearly Bates and said, "Hey there, God, I'm Stanley."
Oh my god.
Wow, we all
but-
need to do that. That's
Oh.
amazing.
He's a, so he called, and basically he's spending about 5 minutes trying to tell me politely that, as he put it, we're a very poor company and we can't really, we don't have the resources to hire somebody for 2 months and then watch them go away. And before he finished, I said, "Well, sir, actually, I'm doing this for college credit, so I'm not allowed to ask for wages." He said, "You're hired."
Ding! Excelsior! No money.
Oh, and what ended up happening was they gave me like $20 a week to cover train fare into Manhattan. But that was it. And so I worked for Marvel for January and February and a little bit of March in 1969. And it was a whole lot of fun, but the Marvel then was so absolutely different from anything approaching the Marvel that exists today.
What kind of projects did you work on?
Clean floors.
Oh,
that's a great
true intern.
Oh yeah, I was a real intern
this
once
is
myself.
before the term intern.
Okay.
I was literally a gopher. Go for this, go for that.
Understood.
No, I mean, Marvel in those days was a very small shop. There were like 4 basic rooms in this space overlooking Madison Avenue up in I guess basically 60th Street. And I mean, I did whatever was necessary. If I proofread, I answered mail, I wandered around the office and looked over the artists' shoulders as they did repairs on because that was in the days when we actually worked on physical art. But you have to understand the bullpen in those days. You were talking John Romita Sr., Herb Trimpe, Marie Severin, and Frank Giacoia. I mean, you sit there and you think, oh, you were talking about basically the premier Yankee bullpen,
mm-hmm.
Or the Yankee bullpen today. Who knew?
Right.
And it was a whole lot of fun, but you also have to. This is the weeks when Roy Thomas and Neil Adams were doing the X-Men, and that was just coming through. So I would, looking at that and proofreading it and watching the art, looking at the original art, seeing how it was done then, and watching it go out. And I ended up doing a little bit of writing. Nick Fury, Nazis I Have Known and Killed, a 1-page shot of, him.
Oh, nice. Love that.
And ladies I have known and loved, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. And then the most notorious thing that happened was, because as I said, I did proofreading, but at the same time, I'm reading all of the old issues, so I just know what was going on. And because it was really cool, sorry, I'm babbling. Bear in mind, I'd just gotten introduced to American comics about 3 years before, when I was a sophomore or junior in high school, and I was walking home from school and stopped by the coffee shop and was leafing through the comics which were on a stand, and I discovered FF48 by Stan and Frank, and Jack Kirby. And I started reading it and I thought, oh, this is really cool. The Coming of Galactus. Who's that?
Hell yeah.
And I thought, okay, I'll buy this one and I'll try this next one. And I did. And by the time I got to FF50, which is how Reed defeats Galactus, I thought, I got to see what happens next. And Stan and Jack are really cool on this series. What else do they do? And that led me to Thor, and that got me intrigued. What else does Marvel do? And that got me to the Avengers, which was Roy Thomas and John and oh, for God's sakes!
I'm trying to remember too. Is that John Buscema?
Buscema
At the time? Buscema. Sorry.
Yeah. There are far too many Johns at Marvel.
Yes,
so
I read the Spectacular Spider-Man in the '80s with Sal, so I can obviously I'd never figured out how to. Nobody's ever said the name to me, so I never knew how it was pronounced.
But I thought this was really cool stuff, and so I kept reading, and I guess became a fan. Because up till then, all I really was familiar with was English graphic art. I grew up reading Eagle, which was a weekly or bi-weekly newspaper that was primarily for young gents. And you had Dan Dare, Sky Pilot of the Spaceways,
Elton John song,
full color pages, the first page and the last page of the issue, and it was science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
It was superhero science fiction, although he was just basically a colonel. It was in Space Force, but it was really the Royal Air Force. And other, scattered other comics within the magazine, plus forgive me, plus text articles, adventures, lots of stuff. But that was really cool for me. And the American comics that I was reading, or when I would go to get my haircut, were just, by comparison, utterly boring.
Oh, wow.
There's a reason why the sales collapsed the end of the 50s and the beginning of the 60s, and that was because it was just, for me anyway, very you had Superman going from a 7-figure monthly print run to like low 6 figures and crashing with enthusiasm.
Oh, wow.
Because there was nothing there to read.
Oh, wow.
Well, the attitude was that we replace our audience every 2 or 3 years. Therefore, we don't really have to come up with new stories. We just reprint the same ones every 3 years. And the art was, for my eyes anyway, not that intriguing, especially, as I said, compared to Eagle, where you had boring art, but then you had just spectacular art alongside it. So I was, basically on my way out of the medium. And as I said, then I discovered Stan and Jack, and that was a whole different, much more visually eloquent presentation. And I thought, and the thing was, for Stan, he wrote stories for people who wanted to read stories. And it was very, very cool. And they were characters who presented themselves as much more human than anyone else you could see in any of the other companies over here. I mean, how does, again, FF50 was a double-sized issue, but it ended with Johnny Storm going off to college. I mean, he was only there for 4 issues until they got bored with it and sent him back. But
right.
It was still really, really cool, and much more 3-dimensional than any other comic I was seeing at the same time, whether it was DC or Charlton or whatever. So I stuck with it. And the thing I was about to say was, I'm sitting there reading all the back issues I could find at Marvel, and I'm proofreading this one particular day Sergeant Fury. And I get to a point where Sergeant Fury goes home to Brooklyn for Easter, I think, he gets leave from the Howling Commandos. It was a very, very, how shall we say, less compressed war than it was in real life. You could just take time off and fly back across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
And,
I was
there
gonna-
was a,
You don't hear a lot
sure.
of those
out of
stories. Yeah.
Heathrow and just,
Yep.
Anyway. So he's going back to Brooklyn to visit his family. His mom and his brother, who was going to grow up to become Scorpio. And I'm reading it and I thought, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. And I go back and I'm looking at the books I'd just been reading in the file, and there's Sergeant Fury 7 or somewhere in the teens. It was from the beginning. And it was the trial of Nick Fury, where he's getting court-martialed for something. And this priest sits up there and says, "You got to understand, Your Honor, poor Nick Fury is but an orphan."
Whoops.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
This could be challenging. And so I go up to Roy and I say, "We have a problem here. This book, which we're about to publish, has him going home to meet his mom and his brother and family and such. And this book that was published 10 years ago says, in fairly plain English, he's an orphan."
No, his family grew back.
Well, no. So I said, "What do we do?" And Roy looks at me and says, "Okay, call Stan." "What? You found it? Call Stan." So I called him up, and Stan, and I tell him what happened was, "Oh, okay, fix it," and hung up.
Super easy.
Roy, and Roy said, "What did he say?" And I said, "Well, he said, fix it." And Roy said, "Okay, do it." "What? You found it, you fix it, go." And I went back to my desk and I sat down and looking at this thing. What do I do now? Oh my gosh. And I'm trying, duh. Nick Fury goes back on leave to visit his adopted mom and his adopted brother. And I thought, that's easy.
Easy. Look at that. You invented the easy button.
That's how it was published. And I found myself thinking, wow, this is really easy. Any idiot can do this stuff. So that's where I got started.
Oh my
God.
That's amazing. So you got the college credit?
Oh, for yeah, of course.
Perfect.
I love it.
Well, I mean, and then my final bit was at the end of the Sentinel saga in X-Men. Roy and Neil are trying to figure out how to get rid of the Sentinels. Since they've beaten the X-Men in all 3 issues that they're in, how can the X-Men defeat them in return? And so I, kind of raised my hand and, "Well, sir, scientists presume that mutations on Earth are caused by solar radiation, and solar radiation is generated from the sun. So maybe if you want to get the Sentinels, bluff the Sentinels, Scott could say, if you want to end mutation on Earth, you've got to destroy the sun or deal with the sun."
Oh, I get it now.
And next thing we know, Neil's walks in the next day with this magnificent full-page splash, a shot of the sun. The sun is so huge it can't even fit in the panel. I mean, in the page. So the 4 corners, you can see sort of space, but the rest of it is all brilliant sun. And you see the Sentinels, just this huge Sentinel in the foreground and little smaller and smaller ones as you get farther away, just descending into the sun. And it's a magnificent image.
Way to go, Scott.
That's amazing.
So I thought, wow, I came up with the idea. Woohoo! Not that I got a credit or anything, but
right. But you'll always know it's in your heart. It's in your heart.
Well, and I also came up with the pitch and sold for $25 the story that brought them back, like 2 years later, 3 years later. Yeah. But that's how you work at Marvel in those days. Is you're in the right place at the right time, and you just have a brilliant idea. I mean, 3 years plus later, when I was actually working for Marvel as a a punk assistant editor. Roy walks in at like 5:30 and holds up a 18 pages of comic art and says, I need this written by tomorrow. Who wants it? And I got my hand up first. And it's like, basically this book has to be turned, the script issue has to be turned in tomorrow morning by 8:00 in the morning. And in a way, it's a test, because if you can do it, then you get first shot at the next one. If you don't do it, you go to the back of the line, and that's it. So I did it, and that's how it worked. You prove you can do this stuff. You get another shot, a better shot. If you can't do it, you go to the back of the line of the queue.
Wow.
But it was a very primary, very simple not an exam, but environment. There were no editors per se. Stan's attitude was, I evaluate stories writers on the basis of 3 elements. Ideally, you've got to be good, you've got to turn the work in on time, and you cannot be a pain in my ass. I've got too much to do.
Fair.
2 out of 3, you can keep your job. I prefer.
Well, that's good.
3,
Yeah.
and I prefer one of them be that you're a brilliant writer.
Right.
But I'll take any 2. If you're not a pain in my ass and you get the books in on time, go. Because, as Stan put it, I'm running this company. I have, I'm coming up with, you have to realize that every significant concept in Marvel history was created by Stan and Jack. The FF, well, Spider-Man was probably, it's Stan and Steve Ditko.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else, as I said, the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, well, not Spider-Man, but was created by Stan and Jack. And everything that is done at Marvel since then has evolved from that foundation. And for the most part, back in the beginning, Stan wrote it all. So we're not talking about a minor talent and minor contributor to the both to the company and to the comics as a whole. Stan, to me anyway, was it. He was the man.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm one of the few writers who look at things from that perspective instead of looking at them from the perspective of all of this creation came out of Jack, which is true. But it's a balance. It's not always one person in and of themselves. It's a synergy. And in Stan and Jack, you had a magnificent synergy. Is just like all synergies on that level, after a certain amount of time, it falls apart because you have a lot of creative ability and a lot of ego, and it just, it doesn't. The book has to go this way. Well, that way doesn't work. No, it does work. You're not listening,
Yeah, it's like the Beatles. That's why the Beatles only lasted a finite period of time.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Beatles too, because I was having this conversation with someone else. I was doing an interview like this before. He says everything in pop music that you know about comes from the Beatles.
Well, it's like after 2 or 3 years, John Byrne and I came to a parting of the ways, and mm-hmm. I think the way I understand John put it to Jim Shooter was that he goes or I go.
No.
And I want
love it.
And well, Jim's attitude was, I was there first,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't have gotten to you without me. So he gave John the FF, and that was another like 3 or 4 brilliant years
Right.
from
Right.
John.
Yeah.
I just read that run recently, and I'm a longtime fan of his, and it's unfortunate that I can't sit down and have a chat with him like this because he doesn't do interviews anymore. But longtime fan of his work, same way I'm a longtime fan of your work.
No, if I were anywhere near as skilled as Walter Simonson or Frank Miller, I'd be I don't even want to think about where I'd be. But at the moment, I've always just focused on one skill, which is writing.
So that's a good turning point at this, because Chris, you've worked with amazing artists. I'm just thinking of like John Romita Jr. He was my artist for the X-Men. That's when I came in, loved his art so much. Paul Smith, some of the art he did on some of the books was amazing. Jim Lee, and then Salvador Larroca too is an amazing artist that I don't think gets enough credit, that you worked with extensively as well. So based on that, were you able to influence the artists you got to work with? Like you say, like, I want to work with this guy. And then are there any other artists that you wish you got to work with or what you want to work with in the future?
No, Jack would have been fun to work with.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Neil. Neil Adams and I almost a couple of times came close to working together, but it never worked out. Never got the chance. Yeah, there are always artists you would like to work with. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The interesting thing is I'm working with an artist right now who's responsible for the Wolverine Kitty miniseries.
Oh wow.
Who is quite exceptional. But sadly, they're miniseries. It's you play the hand you get. I feel extraordinarily lucky in the opportunity to have worked with some absolute clutch of the most spectacular artists in the business. I mean, if Paul Smith and I fantasize if we'd stuck together, if he'd stayed on the book for another year, we could have owned the industry. Because the way sales
was so beautiful.
Well, sometimes things go your way, sometimes they don't. There's nothing really to be done about it other than you just take the cards you're dealt and see if you can either bluff a great hand or actually get a great hand. But it's the thing about comics is that it's a unique medium. It provides the opportunity of synergizing visuals and, for want of a better term, text, in that you're getting not only pictures of characters, but what they're saying, what they're thinking, occasionally balloon captions to put it all in a context. This is something you won't get in prose because those are just words. Here you can actually get the visceral of boom, here's an image. It's a difference from film in that you are permitted the opportunity to think about the images that you're looking for. The challenge with a film, the challenge with TV is that once you start the film going, you just got to keep going. You can't stop. You can't think about it. There's not a pause for breath. There's not in the current era by contrast to back in the 60s, if you have a 2.5 hour film, there are no intermissions. It's like in the last Avengers before the Avengers versus not Galactus versus
Thanos.
Oh, Infinity War.
Yeah,
Thanos.
Infinity War Endgame. Yeah, the movie. Yeah.
Infinity film.
Yes.
There's the offhand moment where, and what will you do, Master Thanos? I will just sit here.
Yeah, right.
And I thought, oh, okay, bathroom break.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's like probably not a good sign if your major character is just sitting around waiting. You think, does that mean the film could be faster or more exciting? But forgive me, I just gripe now because I was sitting in the audience trying to think, how do I get out of this row and get a bathroom break?
Oh.
It was when that movie came out, they very specifically published times like, well, go to the bathroom right when the Hulk is doing his thing at the beginning of the movie. It's like it was known, but that was in the last act of the movie, so you couldn't, because then everything went all.
But the other side of that coin is if you're in the middle of a row, you've got to stagger over 20 other people.
Yes.
To the eye, get to the and then get back.
Yeah.
So it's times have changed.
There used to be an app for that would tell you when you could go, but yeah, it's very hard these days. Yeah.
And
true.
apparently, the talk is that for the part 2 of the event, the next Avengers, or the FF, or whatever the hell it is with Doom.
Yeah. Secret Wars, I think is.
It's going to be 4 hours.
Oh my God! Please no.
Wow. Wow.
Oh boy.
I mean, who knows? That's 2 years away. It's like, oh, for goodness sakes. But still, oh, for goodness sakes. I mean, some of us are not quite as vigorously young as we used to be. And at some point, the Coke you're drinking will take its revenge. But there you go. I mean, on the other hand, it could be a film that makes you want to just sit there and stare and see what happens next until it,
I hope so.
Well, me too.
I hope that's what they do.
Well, I mean, I have to say it looks very interesting. The photographs that keep popping up of Doom and various other major characters in the Marvel film pantheon who shall remain nameless. Plus, they keep announcing more characters who will be in the film. I mean, oh, for goodness sakes.
They got to have that 4 hours. Everybody gets 0.2 of a second of screen time.
Well, maybe that's why the film is like 17 hours long. I don't know.
Absolutely.
That's right.
An epic.
It's, who the heck knows? I mean, it's a year or more until anything actually gets into the theaters.
Right.
So from the photographs that are showing up online, it looks really cool.
Oh, absolutely.
It does. Yeah. I was going to ask you, Chris, as we move on to, the next big parts of the MCU, obviously we're going towards the X-Men, and they've been leaning into that. You've been in some of the X-Men films, which is great. And then now we're seeing kind of a next iteration of what the X-Men will be under Disney, and with the FF going to kind of more of that classic Stan and Jack era. And you've lived through all of those eras with the X-Men. Do you have any thoughts on like what you'd like to see with a new take on the X-Men on the screen?
Well, as Deadpool pointed out to Hugh Jackman, it's like, they got you till you're gonna be 100, dude. And from the way that Hugh Jackman looked in Deadpool,
oh my God.
You go, guy.
Do it.
And I believe they're bringing back as I understand it, they're bringing back the original cast,
right,
of X-Men. you know, what I would love to see are my stories done right, i.e., done as the stories, more like the stories that were written. But I suspect every writer feels that way who sees his or her stuff presented on film.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it all depends on who is producing and writing and directing the film, who is in the film, how all the elements synergize together. I mean, the way my fantasy was that after Days of Future Past, when Wolverine comes back and Charlie welcomes him back to the school, and Logan says, "I suspect the world I remember isn't the world you remember." And then he steps out and sees Famke Janssen and, Jean. And then, of course, Cyclops steps out and says, "Oh,
Scott."
And I was thinking the way, if I were doing it, I would say, "Oh," and the next thing that happens is, "And Scott, here is our daughter, Rachel."
that'd have been fantastic.
Oh my God. Yes.
And then have Sophie Turner step out, young Sophie Turner, and it's like, "Oh, this looks interesting." And then my vision for it was that you go through the film, and then you get to the credits and you run the credits, and as you're getting to the end of the credits, you start getting a weird kind of effect, and it focuses in on Jean and Scott in bed, and suddenly Jean wakes up and finds herself surrounded by the Phoenix Force, and it's like, what? And she, follows it down the hall, and the Force embraces both Rachel, who's sleeping on the bed, and her, and it's like the bird face appears, and it's like, oh my God. And then you cut on to the next film, which is, I guess would be Apocalypse, set in the present day. And the idea I had for that was that Charlie will be Patrick Stewart physically, but in his mind, he's
McAvoy.
Yep.
James McAvoy, young, with hair, passionate.
Right.
He is the essence of his power, of Charlie's power. And then they go up against Apocalypse, and Apocalypse has no interest in Charlie. Charlie's too old, but what he's after is Jean.
There you go.
But the fight, you can actually show the psychological fight, or the telepathic fight in his brain, which is him, Patrick Stewart, and him, and Apocalypse going at it hammer and tongs.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where McAvoy is smashed down, and that sets up the injury in Charlie that is revealed in Logan. His kind of...
Got it. Oh, that's how he became paralyzed.
Yeah.
Well, not paralyzed, just, no.
Well,
he lost control of his powers.
Charlie's always been paralyzed.
Yeah.
Right.
But
yes.
But in the final scene, he's about to merge with Jean, and Rachel comes to the rescue.
Right.
And it's like, wow. But then the energy bursts out of her and shoots up into space, and Jean is like, uh-oh. But at that point, they're too busy dealing with the aftermath of Apocalypse, and then you do the end credits, and you hear this desperate SOS being broadcast, and you're in deep space in the middle of nowhere, and you find this Imperial Shi'ar battleship, and the planet of the weird people being destroyed. The sun goes supernova, the planet is destroyed, the ship is and by the Phoenix, and then you have the guy desperately calling Lalandra. I mean, well, you started with Lalandra being woken up and said, "You gotta get," and it's her discovering, dum 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 dum, the Phoenix is out, and the Phoenix is in its predatory state, and we end it with the planet being destroyed, and Lalandra, something must be done, dum 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 dum, and then the next film would be Phoenix, where Jean saves the universe, and everybody's going, "Oh, not Jean, sorry, Rachel saves the universe."
Yeah.
And then after that comes Dark Phoenix. And
Wow.
Well, and that's a setup for Logan, because only 7 X-Men survive.
Right.
But which 7?
It could have saved the Foxiverse.
Or 7 could be killed. I mean, it can go either way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that would in turn lead us into Logan. And the thing that always ticked me off about Logan, I'm afraid, is that Charlie should have had a moment before he dies where he gets to be a hero too.
Right.
Instead of just being killed. But that's a whole different discussion, which would take hours and hours. But I mean, the thing is, you play with it. If you're shifting from one reality to another, you play with it in a way that suits the reality. I mean,
right.
The TV series, the one that's set in the 90s, the animated series.
Oh, X-Men 97.
X-Men 97. Are freely adapting all of my stuff they can get their hands on.
Right.
But they're doing it their
Absolutely.
way.
Yeah. Their way.
Well, it's again, like every writer, it's like, well, if you're doing it my stuff, if you're doing the story I wrote, do you have to do it without doing it right or whatever? And if you've only got 23 minutes, it has to be more compressed, or this or that or whatever. And it's always the, how shall we put it, tactfully, discussion between the writer of the source material and the people who are writing for the film as to how you make it work. It's, I think the thing that I would wish the most is that you do in a movie that is derived from the comics, give the original creators of the material a slightly bigger credit, slightly earlier in the credit sweep, but not smashed in between, and here's the accountant's assistant. Oh, and here are the creators, and here's another accountant's assistant. It's
before they thank the Teamsters.
Yeah, right. And here's craft services.
There ought to be a way to acknowledge the creativity that brought the characters and the story into being, without compressing names in the middle of a fast-moving track, so that you literally have to wait until the DVD comes out so you can freeze it, so you can actually see your name and get your moment of whoopee.
Yeah.
But that, again, that's a very complicated side of the equation, because you then have to discuss okay, if you're going to give them a bigger credit, does that mean you have to pay them? Does that mean you have to do this? Does that mean you have to do that?
Right.
It's, but back in the day, we were, it would have been nice just to get your name on screen, kind of thing.
I can imagine.
We just watched Superman the movie again. We were reviewing that, and it was I totally forgot that they put the Superman the movie 1978, and they had Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster right there at the very beginning of the credits, right in the middle of the screen. I'm like, that was amazing, but I imagine that was a tough battle to get. I know there were so many battles of the property of Superman with those creators, and
that was one of the things Neil Adams was very passionate about, was in finding a way to make sure that Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster got the credit. Listen, when I was associate editor at Marvel, the number 2 editor at Marvel, Marv Wolfman, who was editor in chief, calls me into his office and said, "I need you to take this call." And I said, "What call?" I said, and it was Jerry Siegel, and I had to tell him, "No, we cannot use your submission." That's not a position you want to be in, especially given, hi there, as my inner dialogue was, "Hi there, creator of our medium, without whom none of us would have a job. I have to tell you, we can't use your..."
That's tough stuff.
Well, but this is also the other half of the equation, is that when you're in your 20s, you never see the other side of that. Football.
Yeah.
The other side of that field. You're at the good side here.
Right.
You never think 50 years ahead, you'll be looking back and going, there once was a time when Marvel acknowledged the creators on every issue, when we said it was by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, or when we said created by Chris Claremont and I don't believe this.
John Byrne?
No, John. No, that would be Dave Cockrum, not
Dave
John
Cockrum.
Byrne.
Oh, Dave Cockrum. That's right. That's right. When Dave started, yeah.
Oh, see, this is it. Everyone thinks of John. No one thinks
it's
of
the start
Dave,
of it.
without whom none of this would have existed.
Right.
All those characters created for Giant Size X-Men and all those images.
Well, I mean, the extraordinary, the advantage I had doing the X-Men was that I was creating a team that was brand new. That the only survivor from the original cast of X-Men was Cyclops. I mean, then we brought in Jean because, you literally can't have one without the other.
Right.
But it was essentially a whole new series, starting with X-Men 94. So for me, it was like totally cool because I was creating, aside from the Sentinels, pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And that made it a really, really cool experience that pretty much no one else at Marvel could have at that point, because if you're doing Spider-Man, he's gone through a half dozen writers. FF have gone through a half dozen writers. The Avengers, God knows how many writers. That was what, for me, made the X-Men so much fun. And once you get into the habit of creating new characters and new stuff, and it turns out to continue to be a lot of fun. Oh, and being the best-selling comic in modern comics history, that's not easy to walk away from.
Right. I can imagine. Well, I have
I was
go ahead, Ted.
Oh, I was going to say, I had one X-Men question. I know Charlie wants to talk about a little bit of some of your other work, but really quick, obviously you're known for, well, X-Men quickly became known for events, the Dark Phoenix saga, many other mutants. I loved those eras, and then the Mutant Massacre was a big deal for a young kid like myself. When you see Angel hung up and his wings getting hit by and you think, is he going to die, what's going to happen with him? And then we saw through various different issues of X-Men where he went with X Factor, and the fact that he became Archangel. That's an amazing arc for a character when he was a heritage X-Men, through all those times when he changed and when he went through. For yourself and all of those different events you did, was there a specific outcome of a storyline or a character where you were able to really change their evolution and where they became a different character, or maybe went on a specific journey?
Well, in retrospect, I think both Wheezy and I ended up agreeing that the Mutant Massacre was the biggest mistake ever.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
Well, we did it, and it was incredibly successful, and nothing is more destructive to any concept than success. Because, well, if the Mutant Massacre was good, we ought to do another big event next year.
Right.
And next year.
Yep.
And every year until now.
Spring. Wait, if we do a big event in the spring, we can do one in the summer.
Right.
It's like a movie studio saying, well, we've got 4 major franchises. We could do a big event in spring, summer, fall, and winter. Yeah. Until one of them flops, and then you're really up the,
It's like having one flat tire.
Well, it's like back in 5 actually, when it seemed like every director who was supposed to do the third X-Men movie, Dark Phoenix, theoretically Dark Phoenix, kept getting run over by a truck or going crazy or quitting or getting into a fight with Fox. But the plea was, couldn't you put it back a year? Because here it is, May of 2005, and the movie's due out in 11 months, and we're only on the first draft of the screenplay. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And Fox said, basically, tough luck. We've already commissioned the sets. You can do what you like with the dialogue, but nothing is going to change. And to sit there and watch Dark Phoenix and wonder, well, is Jean going to get to do something at any point? No. She basically gets to kill all the mutants that Fox wanted to get rid of, and then she gets killed.
Ouch.
Well, no, I mean, it's very heartbreaking when you have performers who can present the characters in an eloquent and passionate manner, but the studio really doesn't care. And all they view it as is this year's summer tentpole, and you can have 100 minutes, and if it's a success, if it's not a success, the difference was that the Marvel movies built on one another.
Mm-hmm.
So you do Iron Man, and that, wow. You do Thor, then you do Captain America, and out of nowhere, wow.
Yep.
Then you just build up the ladder until you get to the first Avengers, and that was like, wow.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And you keep going, and by the time you get to see, my memory's gone. What's his face?
Thanos.
Yes, him too. you have a sense of conclusion,
Mm-hmm.
but then you have to start all over again.
Yeah, that's where they are now. Yeah.
And now you seem to have, Avengers A and Avengers not so A minus.
A minus
You know,
minus.
Who are
Yeah.
What is it? The Great Lakes Avengers?
No. You have the
The Thunderbolts.
Yeah,
Thunderbolts.
Thunderbolts Asteroid. The new Avengers, they called them at the end of that movie. Yeah.
Well, but there are two Avengers now.
Right.
You've got Hawkeye, not Hawkeye.
Well, you got Sam.
Yeah.
You've got
Sam and Falcon and Ms. Marvel. There was an article recently where they rattled off the ones that they think are part of the core Avengers, and then the Thunderbolts people. Yeah.
The joke, of course, being I remember back like 6 films when Cap and the Widow come out and say, "Okay, who are the new Avengers?" And there's
right.
There's the Scarlet Witch, and there's
Vision, Falcon,
Vision, and then you have the Black Panther, and it's like, that's a pretty good Avengers team,
right?
And whatever happened to them?
All kinds of stuff.
Broken apart right away.
Yeah, exactly.
Some more.
Yeah, Civil War.
It gets a little frustrating. It's, but that's it. And now you have DC trying to do it right their way. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I agree. Look forward to it. I have a question. It's not X-Men related. We'll take this to wrap it up, and then we definitely want to hear a little bit about what you're working on right now, because you mentioned the miniseries that you're working on. But I'm a Spider-Man guy. You can see it all over this room. No big surprise. I grew up reading comics in the '80s, the same that Todd did. But I know we're children. I'm sorry. We're not as young as some of the kids.
No, he said you're old, Charlie. I'm 50 now, so no longer a child.
Todd's old. I'm 40. I'm 49.
I know.
But I grew up, collecting back issues because this title had wrapped up by the time I was really reading. But Marvel Team Up, which I love, you had a great run on Marvel Team Up. Mm-hmm. But issue 74 was Spidey and the inaugural cast of Saturday Night Live, which is the wildest and craziest thing, no pun intended, I feel like I've ever seen. How did that happen? I mean, I just got to know. It's wild.
Well,
so tell me.
The funnier thing is when they put together the hardcover compilation, we had to jump in and say, that can't be printed.
I still have my single issue, and it actually is now, it's on Marvel Unlimited now. I looked at it a couple of weeks ago.
What is?
That issue. It's
on Marvel Unlimited?
I believe so, yeah. Unless the cover is anyway. I'm like, what is this doing here? Because I have my hard copy, and I'm like, I have to hang on to this forever because it's spoof. I'm pretty sure it is.
What is Marvel Unlimited?
That is Marvel's, basically, it's Netflix for Marvel. They have thousands of titles there. You just read them digitally on your iPad.
Oh, I gotta get Jesus.
I didn't know you knew about it. Look at that. We all learned something.
It's only $7 a month too, so it's a great service.
You have to understand. We signed. The contracts are for one use only.
Oh.
And since 3 of the 7 actors are no longer with us, the whole point. Okay, so Jim Shooter and me and a couple of other people were sitting around the office, basically spitballing, what can we do that would be cool in Team Up?
Right.
And so I was saying, well, it would be really cool is if we could, team him up with something unexpected but real. What do you mean? Well, like SNL. Imagine Spidey teaming up with the Not Ready for Primetime Players, because it wasn't called SNL then.
Right.
50 years ago.
Yeah.
And so Jim says, okay, why don't you call him and ask? Shades of me calling Stan to say, Captain America, Nick Fury's in the wrong place.
Right. Right.
So I called up Lorne Michaels' office, and I said, hi, I'm Chris Claremont. I work for Marvel Comics, and we do a comic called Marvel Team Up, and we were wondering, as a total wackadoo thing, if you guys would like to guest star. We wanted to do the issue, wanted to know if we could guest star the not ready for primetime players with Spider-Man in our comic book. And there was a pause. I'm sorry, who are you? And so I went through the whole thing again, and we were wondering if this is something Mr. Michaels might be interested in. Another long pause.
No.
We'll get back to you.
Oh boy.
Then Jim says, "What do you think, Chris?" And I said, "I don't think it went as well as we could hope." And about half hour, 40 minutes later, while we're still talking, the phone rings, and it's Jim's office, and they have Lorne Michaels' office on the line. So Jim, yes, this is Jim Shooter. Yes, I'm editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics. Yes, Chris Claremont is a writer for Marvel Comics. Matter of fact, we were just sitting here discussing a book he writes, Marvel Team Up, and we had an idea. Would you be interested in guest starring Not Ready for Primetime Players with Spider-Man, your biggest, with our biggest hero, in an issue? And figure about 6 weeks later, we had a contract.
Wow.
And I could never figure out for like 30 plus years, 40 years, what happened. And then, I suddenly realized John Belushi was a huge comic fan.
Wow.
John Belushi was a huge Marvel fan.
Oh, okay.
So we figured what happened was somebody must have told him what was going on, and he must have gone into Lorne's office and just laid down the law. Let's do this. This will be totally cool. And basically, it's a one-time use contract. No one else. It could never be reprinted ever.
Oh, okay.
And we did it for free.
Whoa.
They did
I
it.
had no idea.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I know that it was
all
never
of
going
the
to get
money
in
was
print.
donated to charity.
Oh, that's terrific.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I know that if you go, because I have the old black and white, they used to call them Marvel Essentials. They published them in the early 2000s of all of the issues of that, and 74 is omitted. But I have a print copy and I keep it in my stuff. But if I'm wrong about this Marvel Unlimited thing, then hopefully
you may totally be right.
But I feel like I was looking at it last week and I was like, I can't believe 74 is in here because I thought it was forbidden for it to appear.
Not my department.
Yeah.
I was just, if I'm sure Lorne and Disney can come to if something, if who knows,
right?
But no. But the thing was, that was back when kind of comics were cool, or at least to me, comics were cool. Sure. I mean, Marie Severin ended up going through the whole book and fixing all the heads to make sure that everybody on SNL looked like SNL.
Yeah, yeah.
But then when the book came out, so I'm sitting at home looking much like I do now, writing, and the phone rings and it's Jim Shooter, and he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm writing." "How soon can you get down here?" "Why?" "John Belushi will be in the office in 30 minutes. I'll be there in 20. I made it with about...
Wow.
Oh my God.
Well, back then I lived at the top of Manhattan Island, and Marvel was down, on 57th Street, 56th Street on Park Avenue. Yeah. So I was, getting clothes on and washing, and just, I managed to find a cab and get down there. And Belushi walks in and we're going, "Oh my God, it's John Belushi." And he's going, "Oh my God, it's Marvel Comics." And it's like mutual fan, like, "Wow." And then Patty Cockrum walks in and grabs a yardstick and just assumes the position. And Belushi just grabs another yardstick, and suddenly it's samurai war. And
That's awesome.
he was excited, we were excited. So he says, "Hey, would you guys like to come to the premiere of Animal House tonight?" And we thought,
No way.
"Oh, sure."
Oh, sure.
See
I
that?
guess.
Remember those two words, because I may have to dash to answer the door in about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Depends. The dog's, yelling. But so we're all kind of going, "Wow, this will be so cool." And then the phone rings, and it's Lorne's office, and it's like, "We're really sorry. We sold out Radio City. No seats available."
Aw.
And we kind of went, "Okay, I understand. So would you guys like to come to the opening night party instead?" Oh God.
Hell yes.
I don't know. That could be tough. So we went, and it was so cool.
Oh my gosh.
We're there just saying hello and greeting people and giving away original art pages for the issue. It was wonderful.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
See, the coolest thing for me was I got to research the show to make sure I could try and get everybody as close to reality as possible. I went to 3 or 4 dress rehearsals, because see, the way SNL worked back then, I'm sure that it's very similar to how they work now, is that you have the live show at 11:30, at 11:30, but from about 9 till 11 or 8 till 10, you would have the dress.
Right. Yeah, so I've heard.
The dress usually runs about 2 hours plus, because this is where you basically make the final decision on which skets you keep and which you dump.
Right.
And so, and it's you don't have the intense pressure of being live, so you can stop, you can fix things, you can yell at people, you can have discussions, yada yada. So I'm sitting there watching, and can't remember, but I think they might even have an audience as well. So I'm watching it, and taking notes, and this is really cool. And then I go home and watch the real show. So I can, figure out, oh, that's really cool. They did this and they didn't do that. But it's an amazing way to learn how it all gets put together. And then the giggle for me was in April, I was at a convention in DC, and there was this girl that I was trying to see if something could happen, and I said, "Hey, would you like to come up to New York? I got an invitation to the rap party for SNL. It'll be a lot of fun." And she said, "No, that's okay, Chris. Thank you." "Okay, sorry." So I went.
Oh no!
And she's going, "Where's Chris?" "Oh, he had to go back to New York to see the Saturday Night Live rap party." "You mean he was serious?" She thought it was.
I just thought she sounded like she was no fun, but she was just not buying it, huh?
Yeah, well, that's life for you.
That's life. Yeah, you got to take your chances. Well, oh my goodness. Go ahead, please.
No, I mean it was remarkable. And again, this is part of the reason we got away with it. This was the 3rd year.
Right.
I mean, Chevy Chase had just quit. Bill Murray had just come in. It was the show existed, but it wasn't the show.
Right. The institution.
And
right.
The idea of doing it, and Belushi, as I said, was a comics fan. When he got his new apartment, and they did a piece in this Architectural Digest of what the work that had been done on the interior to make it look cool. One of the photographs had the original art just lying on a table. So
Oh
it's like,
wow.
yeah,
I just watched a whole documentary about him that's on Paramount Plus or something that did not come up that he loved Marvel Comics. So that's a really cool piece of inside information.
mhm.
My
See, it's
goodness.
amazing the little surprises you can
Yeah,
discover in comic book land.
no doubt about it. Well,
And I did find the issue,
you did,
Charlie. I
yeah,
did find the issue.
yeah,
I put it in our
I
chat.
see it.
It's on Marvel Unlimited.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure, Chris, you get a copy of that link and ask
Yeah.
Marvel for a free. I'm sure they'll give you a free subscription
You should
since you're good friends with them.
You should absolutely have it. It is a nice way to read comics if you enjoy reading them in that way. Everybody has their preference, but
Well, the interesting thing is, in doing reference on some of the stuff I'm doing, yeah, it would be nice to get access to,
oh, we can be the ones, Todd. Let's make it happen. We can be a cog in the wheel.
Absolutely.
We're very excited. We will be happy to help out, and then you can tell the people at Marvel that we would love to work with them more often. I'm just kidding. I'll ask one last.
We can be your interns.
I'll ask
right?
you.
We're unpaid.
I'll ask you one last question.
I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. I'll ask you one last question, and then we'll let you go. This has been tremendous. But I always wrap by asking, what are you working on these days? Where are people going to find your stuff?
At the moment, I'm just doing miniseries
Okay.
that are derived from work back in my day.
Yeah.
So it's my 17-year run, 16-year run, but there's a lot of stuff there I can play with. For example, the arc I'm working on now, its second issue just came out yesterday, is a sequel to the Kitty Pryde Wolverine miniseries.
Right. Yeah, I've seen it.
It goes back to Japan. Well, it goes to Japan to find out what's happening with her father, and lots of interesting stuff happens. And she gets her head shaved because this is the Ogun's arc that Salvador and I finished off in. So what I kind of call what would have been the next arc in Excalibur. No, in Extreme X-Men, where Kitty basically finds that Ogun has not left the building, and Excalibur has to save the day. And just goes to show that don't pick on Rogue just because she doesn't have any powers. She's even nastier than before. So in this one, this is essentially what happens next, as Kitty and Logan are sort of getting prepped to go back to the States and rejoin the X-Men, and suddenly things start to happen. And the challenge with me is I've got 5 issues. How many stories can I fit into it? Right. Because back when I started, Stan's rule was, because sales and distribution suck, we only do 1-issue stories. That way, if you're a new reader and you miss an issue, well, it doesn't cause too much damage.
Right.
Whereas today, if you miss an issue, it can be catastrophic.
Right. Like on TV, like any TV show is the same way.
TV shows, you just wait for them,
Yeah.
You collect them all at the end of the year.
But
in this instance, for me, the challenge is, for example, with the Gambit miniseries that I did last year, I think it was last year, there were 3 contained stories in it. The first one that sets it up, and then 2 2-part stories that take us through the rest of the issue. Because if you want to give a reader something that's worth the $5 an issue he or she is paying for. And if we do 2 or 3 different stories, actual stories, then maybe it'll be more fun than just one long story. because if you miss the first issue or the third issue, you won't be feel totally bereft, because
Right.
we have a complete issue and another complete issue. Sorry, a complete story and another complete story. So if
Yeah.
you miss an issue, you'll still get something for your money.
Right.
In this
Awesome.
case, what happens here is that, well, as you discover from the first issue, which is already out, weird things happen. Kitty isn't sure she wants to go back. The X-Men aren't fun anymore. She's like 14. She's been an X-Men for a year. And yeah, it's like she saved the universe twice, but helped save the universe twice, but she doesn't have any friends, and they doesn't have, can't go out and hang out. It's like she just stands with these boring grown-up people.
Right.
And it's trying to present the world from her perspective. And so while she's in this, while they're waiting for her to get everything in order, because the rest of the world is everything's screwed up by the ancient winter's arc. So nothing's flying. No, there's no way to get home until the snow melts. So she's, the first story, she gets a new costume and saves a bunch of school kids from, evil supervillains. But that's only the first issue.
Oh.
And then the second issue, they find themselves up against mini Sentinels.
Little Sentinels.
Well, Bob McLeod and I did a story that introduced them a year or two ago, with the character who created them, Ziggy Trask.
Mm-hmm.
And with the second issue, you discover we're back.
Oh my!
And things get even creepier.
Can get rid of those guys,
I guess.
Well, they're Sentinels; they just rebuild constantly.
Right. Yeah.
But then
robots.
There's more to this arc than meets the eye, which you find out in the third issue, and then the fourth issue, things get even worse, and then the fifth issue, we have a completely different story.
Oh wow!
Awesome.
Yeah. Well,
good deal.
Oh, and a complication that occurs earlier on that if only I'd been able to play with in real time, it would have been a lot more fun.
Oh,
but
awesome! Well, very cool. 5 issues, 5 stories in comic book shops now, and coming out soon, right?
5 issues, 3 stories.
5 issues, 3 stories, and then
3 stories
at your local shop and et cetera. So,
but I mean and if you like it or not, just I'm online. I have a, just tell me what you think, because the one significantly sad reality of the internet age is that nobody writes letters anymore. I know one of the things that made the X-Men so much fun back in the day was that we would average about 110 letters an issue, which is way cooler than everybody else.
The old bullpen. I know. I actually had a letter printed once, and it was in not a great comic that I got a markup page of. I have a markup from Forceworks #1, and about a letter I wrote about the last issue of the West Coast Avengers, which is a comic I love. Fortunately, Forceworks was not a great title and didn't last very long, but I'm very excited to have that paste-up page in my den. When that just showed up, I was 18.
You're immortalized, Charlie.
Yeah, I know. It's awesome.
But that's, the thing. It's like, the creators never get a chance, the writers never get a chance to see what people think of the actual work. Do they love it? Do they hate it? Why do they love it? Why do they hate it? And asking for that kind of response online is sometimes a matter of intense frustration, because A, you can never find it. B, when you find it, it vanishes like 5 minutes later as the stream just shoves it out of perspective.
Very true. Very true.
At least for when you had the 500 character limit, you couldn't get a really good letter.
Yeah.
So, it's just, oh, for goodness sakes.
Right. But people can get you at it's chrisclaremont.com if I'm not mistaken. And they can reach out to you there. You're on do you still do a lot of Comic Cons? You got any appearances coming up?
Yep. As a matter of fact, off to Budapest, Hungary, and
Holy cow!
Ooh,
Wow,
yeah,
that's amazing.
Nothing like doing a convention at a member of NATO, but a slightly less liberal member of NATO than some of the other countries.
Oh
But that's okay.
my. Very interesting.
We'll probably have to dash out to take care of the dog.
No, that's okay. We're just wrapping up. Yeah.
No, and then right after that, I'm at Heroes Con in Heroes Aren't Hard to Find.
Awesome.
Great convention down in oh, for goodness sakes, Charlotte.
Okay, gotcha. Very good. Very good. Well, Chris, oh my God, this is the most engaging one of these that we've ever done. I'm sure we could continue talking for the rest of forever, but this has been an honor for myself and for Todd as well.
Thank you so much, Chris.
He doesn't know what to say. Patreons, yeah.
That's a wicked thing.
Oh my goodness. If you're listening to this on our network feed, patreon.com/secretfriendsunite, lots of great interviews like this. We would love to have you on board. Chris, thanks again. We appreciate it. And we will see you out there. Thank you.
God willing, and the creek don't rise.
Bye-bye.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.